the little castle at Bolsover was used by William Cavendish, who was a nobleman from the sort of top layer of society of the Midlands and Derbyshire region, as a pleasure house. And you have this sense that you're entering almost a magical theatrical space.
So visitors to Bolsover Castle would have entered the anteroom first, and your eye is immediately caught by this very beautiful temple, a sign of one's spiritual journey to come up to heaven, virtue embodied. However, then you turn around, and here's the first mystery, because behind you are these extraordinary paintings of physical delight, celebrating sensuous, voluptuous, earthly love. And the question is, well, what's the role in all this physical pleasure in one's spiritual journey? Do you have to give up these earthly delights? Are they an essential part of the journey? It's a real puzzle.
So as you enter the hall, you have this really quite dramatic sight of multiple Hercules fighting these animals. And I think what's extraordinary about these is that Hercules is right at the front of the picture. The vaulting continues into the picture, and it's really a very theatrical experience, almost as if the two worlds, the real world and the painted world, are merging.
Hercules tells me that effort is going to be involved on our part. We can't just be passive bystanders here. We're going to have to think for ourselves. We're going to have to interpret these paintings. Effort is going to be involved.
Coming into the Pillar Parlour, we can see that all the paintings in this room are representations of the senses. And they're all quite similar to the original print sources after Franz Floris, apart from Theseus, sight. And this one is substantially changed. On the side of her chair, there's a carving of a griffin. And people who knew the family would know that the griffin was the symbol of the Bassett family, and that was the family of William's wife, Elizabeth Bassett.
Now your journey continues. You wind up the stairs. If you take the right direction, you end up in this glorious star chamber. And the first thing you see on the walls are images from the Old and New Testament, so very strong Christian symbols. However, then your eye goes up to the ceiling, glorious ceiling of stars, and that puts me in mind of the myth of Hercules, who after death was transformed into a constellation of stars. So here is a room in which Christian and pagan imagery are wonderfully celebrated and mixed.
By the time you get here, having seen the imagery in the other rooms, you realise that there could be something quite playful going on. And I think it's very interesting to notice these two characters in the corner who are in contemporary dress, in sort of military uniforms. They look as if they're in the gallery of a theatre, looking down on what's happening in the room below.
Whoever designed this room was very well acquainted with the work of one of the most famous thinkers in the Renaissance, the Florentine philosopher, priest and magician Ficino. And Ficino's view is that the Greek and Roman worlds and the Old and the New Testament were all simply different layers of interpretation of one single ancient true theology.
When you enter William's bedchamber, you find two doors. One of them leads to the heaven closet of Christian heaven, and the other one leads to the Elysium closet. The heaven closet is a really delightful surprise.
And what strikes you is what fun heaven is. It's full of colour and light and dancing and music, and Jesus is dancing and the angels are having a whale of a time. It looks like you're not going to have to give up physical delights if you're going to enter a Christian heaven. And now you walk across from the heaven closet into the Elysium closet, the heaven of ancient Greece and Rome. So whoever designed this room is playing around with the classical notion of a dual Venus, a heavenly and an earthly Venus, because in the classical versions of the story, heavenly Venus is very much superior, but here the two seem to mirror each other. The heavenly Venus is very fleshly, voluptuous, pregnant even. The earthly Venus looks rather chaste, Turning to the panels, a visitor would once have seen images of what appear to be flickering flames. So the question is this an image of celestial fire purging us of our worldly loves and lusts? Or is this the fire of sensuous, physical, erotic delight, which itself has a purifying and transformative effect? I think it's the second, because I think all the messages from the little castle here tell you that in fact a celebration of physical worldly love is a spiritually cleansing and magically transformative experience.
So I think through these puzzles that we've seen through 7 rooms of decoration, it's become apparent that we don't have to choose between pleasure and virtue, we don't have to choose between the classical and the Christian world, and that there is a sense that in playing roles, in taking on the persona of people that we want to think about or emulate perhaps, we might actually be following our own spiritual journey and finding our own way to heaven.